So I have a live wine and spirits encyclopedia with me today. You don't believe me? Wait till you learn about the history, the culture, the geography, the etymology of my guests' knowledge in wine and spirits. And that's just the tip of it. Well, actually the first sip of it. What about the essence, the making, the sensorial aspects of the five senses in the understanding of wine and spirits? My guest refines the drinking experience by going to its core and bringing it out to awaken our appreciation and our feel-good mood. Get ready for a suave and smooth episode with my guest. Let's ask 10 questions to my extraordinary guest, Roy Riachi. Hi, Roy.
Hello.
How are you today?
I'm good, and you?
Good. So I'm so happy to have you here today.
Thank you for hosting me.
Thank you for coming. And to start the podcast, before starting my 10 questions, I'd like you to tell me, this isn't a question, so please tell me, who is Roy Riachi?
So I'm a winemaker and a master distiller. I'm basically born into this family business that spans back 8 generations. What I studied is not directly related to wine and spirits. I have an undergrad in business administration and a postgrad in psychology.
Right. Okay. So that's very different than alcohol and business administration. But it adds a flavor to what you're doing. Okay. So first question, which is related to what you said a little bit, the wine distillery business has been in your family for 8 generations. How did it start? How did it evolve? And what is your legacy going to be in it?
So it started mainly by producing araq and wine. So araq is the national spirit of Lebanon, and wine. So how communities were shaped and formed in the 1800s and 1700s are quite different than they are now. So it's
so 8 generations ago means exactly like 1800.
Early 1800s, late 1700s.
Okay,
exactly.
Wow. Okay.
So it was a feudal system, and we had a parish system in Mount Lebanon in particular. So in the feudal system, you'd have the feudal lords governing different aspects of agriculture in particular, but also the church had a very active political role in governing people's lives, day-to-day lives. So in Khanshara, where we're based at, there is a very ancient wine press that is thousands of years old.
Thousands of years old.
And
based here now in Lebanon.
So it still exists.
Oh.
Also, Lebanon has probably one of the most dense in terms of archaeological artifacts, and especially wine presses. You wouldn't go to any village in Mount Lebanon and not see at least one ancient wine press.
I never realized that. Okay.
So the idea is that I think the entire community used to use those wine presses. And I guess my great-great-great-grandfather was one of those people that was more of a professional when it comes to making wine and spirits. So if you go to the village and ask, because in Lebanon, families can have multiple founding fathers, or in Lebanese Arabic they call them jib. كذا بيكونوا multiple brothers, and each one, let's say, founds a certain family. So Musa Riachi, which is the founding father. After Musa came multiple generations that had multiple wineries and distilleries. So if you go to Khanshara, you can see multiple Riachi wineries.
So it's divided a little bit now. Okay.
And some are defunct, and some are still operational.
Okay. But different businesses right now.
They're different businesses, and their focuses are quite different. We're focusing on premium wines and spirits.
Right.
There is only one main one other than us now. They produce neutral spirits and supply basically alcohol to hospitals and stuff like that. So
not for consumption, like as an F&B and
they do have that as well as raw material.
Okay.
They sell other smaller distilleries, neutral spirit and stuff like that, which is food grade. So the evolution, like anything else, over a period of like 200 years or 8 generations, the portfolio is going to expand. The business will become divided. Our portfolio in particular encompass wine and even the traditional styles. We still do them. We do almost all kinds of spirits.
Do you keep the traditional style as in because it's better, or just to keep the tradition going?
I think it's not about being better or not. I think the traditional wine style in particular, which is called Mbid al-Fash, is more suitable with Lebanese meza, because how it's produced is more like Belade style.
Yeah.
So it's quite a casual wine that is drank chilled. It doesn't need a lot of effort to preserve, for example. And because it's refreshing, it pairs well with meza because it's quite spicy, and you have a lot of different zests and spices and different dishes. So usually strong flavors, you'd need a strong flavor to pair with them, but it has to be also mild and refreshing.
Really? I never knew there was an association with Lebanese wine and meza, because we always talk about Arab. Yeah.
Arab pairs extremely well with meza because it's when you're drinking it, you're not drinking a spirit technically, because when you dilute it with water, it becomes like an anise wine.
Yeah.
So it's quite refreshing, but it has quite a strong flavor. So it serves as a palate cleanser between the two different dishes of
I
meza.
see. Okay, now I understand. Okay, and so your legacy in all of this?
I revived the Fash style. We also preserved how we do the traditional method of distilling Arab, but also we modernized it with different techniques, with upgrading the equipment. Well, the upgrading isn't really my legacy. My grandfather actually upgraded the Arab still, which was an inspiration for me to start with the whiskey.
Yeah, I was going to say you expanded into whiskey.
100%, because of the still that he was using for Arab. Because the design of that still is the main design that is used in producing malt whiskies in particular.
Oh, okay. Interesting. We talk so much, but we never mentioned all of this before. So this is something new for me today. You really have an encyclopedia in your head regarding all this. And you studied business undergrad and you did a master's in psychology. How did you learn all of this?
Well, apprenticeship mainly, how to do that stuff. So Fash wine, if my father didn't tell me how it's made and how to do it, I wouldn't have been able to revive that style, which is almost extinct from the commercial market.
Right.
You can still find it in certain villages, but it's almost non-existent on shelves. So that's how I learned such things. But also, I do a lot of research.
Yeah,
and
that's an understatement. You do a lot of research because you really have so much knowledge in history and culture and everything.
Well, I guess the main drive for making wines and spirits, for me at least, isn't the inebriation part, isn't getting drunk. It's about the entire story, the entire experience. So if you don't know those, I think the experience isn't the full experience, and well, in order to upgrade things, even if you know how to do things traditionally, everything evolves, everything changes. So you should know how to get with the times, learn modernized techniques. So I think combining the apprenticeship with the research is kind of the main advantage in my business, at least.
Yeah, well, you certainly enrich the experience anyways.
Thank you.
So question number 3. So it's a little bit off topic from what we were saying right now. We often hear, and I feel, wine gives me a headache. And I always hear different explanations from everywhere. It's the sulfur, it's the carbon, it's whatever. What makes wine give us a headache? And how can we not give us a headache? What can we do to avoid this?
Well, if you think about wines and spirits, they're technically drugs. So ethyl alcohol has a psychoactive effect on you, and it also has an effect on your physiology.
Okay.
So if you are consuming in large quantities, and how you consume will directly affect what you feel.
Right.
So imagine you're taking Panadol. Okay, if you take a couple of pills, 1 or 2 pills, your headache will go away.
Okay.
But if you take a full pack of Panadol, which is supposedly an analgesic, it will end up in death with liver failure.
Okay.
So similar, it's the same thing with alcohol. If you're limiting yourself to 1 or 2 drinks, you're going to be fine. And also, if you're consuming them in a slow pace.
Slowly, I was going to say, yeah.
So that's why, for example, most people think that tequila gets them drunk faster. It's not the tequila itself.
It's because it's usually in a shot.
Shots, exactly. So the faster you drink and the more you drink, the worse your hangover is. And the hangover is mainly because of dehydration. So
true.
Alcohol triggers your liver to go into detox. So when your liver goes into detox, you end up losing a lot of minerals because you go to the toilet quite often. So if you don't replenish those minerals with drinking water, you're gonna get a headache no matter what you drink.
Okay. So is it okay if I drink wine and have sips of water in between?
After you finish every glass, just have a glass of water.
Okay, I can do that. So question number 4. We are in a part of the world that's very unstable. And it's tough to keep up a business, especially when you have ambition and you have drive. How do you do it? How do you keep up? Because there's also several steps. I mean, there's the raw material, there's the development, there's the production, there's exporting. Each part is affected. So how do you keep up? How do you keep on going with these hard times that we go through?
Well, it's a multifaceted question. So let me break it down. First of all, I think I'm lucky to be born into a family business that have existed for a few centuries.
So it's established.
It's established, but other than that, whatever we're going through right now, my father, my grandfather, even my great-grandfather probably went through worse.
Yeah, true. The world wars. Not to go
even not that far back. If you think about the Lebanese Civil War, about everything that we've also experienced, hyperinflation and currency devaluation in the 80s and the 90s. So I'm lucky that there is that experience. They know how to deal with that stuff.
Oh, okay. So they taught you a little bit. Yeah.
The second part is that our portfolio is quite diverse. For example, during the COVID pandemic, we mostly focused on producing neutral spirits as alcohol, as rubbing alcohol. I actually installed a new still to produce neutral spirits, which was repurposed for producing vodkas. Now, the still itself, the still design is mainly for producing high-end neutral spirits, vodkas in particular.
Okay.
Because eventually, like everything, we were expecting that the pandemic's going to end.
Yes.
So the purpose of the still
it dragged on.
was for basically producing neutral spirits and vodka. So having a diversified portfolio quite helps, and having diversified markets also helped. So
adapting to the situation,
of course. So you'd have to be established in multiple markets, even though our presence in the domestic market isn't great, and it fluctuates quite a bit, but we're well established abroad in multiple
I didn't
countries.
know that. Okay, that's interesting to know too. So what distinguishes, coming back to this, what we just said, what distinguishes Riachi wines and spirits from other local and international brands? Like, is it the materials? Because you're also using cedar wood now to preserve.
For maturation, not
for maturation,
yes.
sorry, you're
for
the
the
expert here, right?
Well, I think each and every wine and spirit has its own story to tell, and I like to perceive the industry of wine and spirits similar to that of restaurants. Even if you have a restaurant, doesn't mean that you're not gonna dine in another one. So what I think is different from between my winery and distillery and others, mainly the focus on, so everything is important from the raw material and everything, and I'm sure there are other wineries and distilleries that make excellent wines and spirits.
We have good wine in Lebanon.
Excellent wine.
Yeah, yeah.
So that from one aspect, we'd like to preserve, aside from, for example, the concept of terroir in wine is important, which is basically reflecting the terroir that you are, the grape is planted in. It's reflected into the flavor of the wine. Now, most wineries obviously try to translate that. However, a lot of
You mean give a story to the
yes.
wine, sort of?
So, aside from being excellent, like all Lebanese wines are excellent, most Lebanese wineries tend to have a lot of Western influence into the styles of wines that they produce.
Is that good? Is that how
It's
you're
neither
saying?
good nor bad.
Okay.
It's just a general style.
Okay.
So the main difference would be, one, we tried to revive the traditional style of making wines, like the fetch wine. And the other thing is that also sometimes the Western influence, the good thing about it is that you have some refinement in like updated knowledge and on scientifically how to
From the
produce,
Western influence.
yes,
Okay.
to produce wines and spirits, but also when you're trying to imitate certain styles, it can basically dilute your how do you say it?
Identity.
Identity as a Lebanese wine or the Lebanese terroir.
Okay.
I'll give you an example.
Sure.
Syrah, for example, is a grape.
Yeah.
It's a type of grape.
Yeah.
In,
We see it as often as the name of a wine also.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Syrah or Shiraz.
Yeah.
They're a type of grape. It's produced in France. The most famous region is Côte d'Ivoire, and you have also South Africa and Australia that are big Syrah producers. Lebanon, for example, they're quite heavily influenced by the French style, and because it's a bold flavor, some winemakers assume that they have to have it overly tannic and overly woody.
What does tannic mean?
Basically, tannins is a natural antioxidant that is present in the grape skin and the grape seed.
Okay.
It's whenever you drink red wine, sometimes you feel that it dries your mouth.
Yes.
That's tannins.
Okay.
So when you have a lot of tannins and you're over oaking it, maturing it in wooden barrels for a prolonged period of time, you're kind of masking the terroir. My wine, on the other hand, I tried not to mask it all that much with the wood. So the process should reflect the
So keeping the core
terroir.
of the grape in the wine, is that what you
Exactly.
mean? Yeah.
And with spirits in particular, there is multiple advantages. The terroir idea is there, even though the whiskey community hates the word terroir. They prefer.
You don't usually associate them together, like terroir and whiskey. It doesn't.
Exactly.
It sounds kind of weird.
Well,
when you
because
put them together.
Whiskey is made from cereal grains, so you can make a whiskey from multiple cereal grains from all over the globe, and then you can use different wooden barrels from multiple regions from around the world. One of my brands, Athir in particular, is made exclusively of Lebanese malted barley, which we floor malt ourselves.
This is an exclusive whiskey that you sell, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's on the high end.
Even the wood that we use is Lebanese oak, Quercus libani, and the maturation
What is the Latin word again for that?
Quercus.
Yeah.
Quercus is oak. Lebanese is the genus.
Oh, okay. Lebanese.
Quercus alba is the American oak.
Okay.
Even the maturation process, instead of using oak barrels, we use clay amphoras, which are the traditional vessel for resting and maturing hara. We only prune the oak trees. We don't cut down trees. We prune.
Right.
We take the branches, we debark them, we cure them, and we place them inside of the amphora to mature with the whiskey. This is one of the whiskeys that we produce.
It's like chemistry almost.
Wine and basically winemaking and distillation are chemistry.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So we do have another brand, which is Levant Heights. This one is more experimental, so we don't have an emphasis over terroir. We try to experiment with different styles. So if I want to summarize, I would say basically experimentation is a very major theme that we have in our winery and distillery, but also cultural and historical preservation. So it's both present in wine and in spirits, in the hara, in everything, in hara and whiskey, in gin, in whatever. Because how can I say it? So with Levant in particular, let's say with the whiskey, even though we're inspired by different whiskey styles or even beer styles, we try to preserve the process while adding a new element into it. I will give you...
So you're balancing heritage and innovation, if you want.
Kind of, in a way.
Okay.
So a couple of examples would be, one of our whiskeys is inspired by an Irish style called pot still whiskey. So the pot still whiskey, they only use batch distillation, as in copper stills and distill over batches, and mainly triple distillation. They distill 3 times.
I hope I remember this. I'll just have to go back to you.
Usually they use unmalted barley and malted barley. The genesis was basically tax evasion, because the Irish were governed by the English, and the English used to levy malt taxes on the Irish. So in order to avoid paying the full tax, they'd use the malted barley for the enzymes to break down the starch, and the unmalted barley for the additional starch.
Yeah.
So they pay less tax.
So there's even a lot of history, political history in the making of whiskey and wine.
So we're inspired by that style. We implement triple distillation, and we have a mash bill that is that has malt in it and unmalted grains. So, but the idea is that with this one, we are using 60% malted barley and 40% Lebanese durum wheat. So
but it's also Lebanese barley, isn't it?
No, it's wheat.
Oh, okay.
60%. I don't have unmalted barley in it.
Oh, okay.
I have malt and wheat.
Okay.
So usually they don't use that much wheat in their whiskies, so it gives off an additional character. So it becomes very floral, you know.
Floral.
Yes, wheat gives off a lot of floral notes.
I didn't know that could be a characteristic of whiskey, being floral.
So whiskey has it's a very broad category.
Yeah, it is.
In Lebanon in particular, we kind of tend to think of whiskey as Scotch whiskey, the whiskey that is produced in Scotland, and mainly a couple of mainstream brands. So beyond those flavor profiles, people really know almost nothing about whiskey. It's quite a broad category.
It is. You're building us awareness a little bit, and it's a lot wider than what we normally think traditionally. You know?
I guess this is another thing we're very focused on creating awareness through workshops and master classes, educating people about both the world of wines and spirits.
I attended one, and it's really interesting, and I highly recommend it.
Glad you liked it.
Yeah, it was really nice. It was really nice. So do we go on to the next question, or did you want to add something? So question number 6. You are expanding internationally. You have won very distinguished prizes for high-quality whiskey, and you are featured in very well-known publications on whiskey. And I heard you this morning talking on a whiskey, what is it called again? The Whiskey Ring podcast with David Levine. Yeah,
yes.
which is American podcast on whiskey.
Yes.
So how do you feel as a Lebanese gaining this kind of renown around the world as a hardworking person? And what are your future ambitions?
Well, definitely to put the Lebanese brand and the Lebanese out there, and to prove that Lebanon can produce high-end wines and spirits, and in particular whiskey. Not only whiskey, even Arab.
Yeah.
The idea is that this is kind of rooted in the history of distillation, because there is this Western perspective that, and sometimes it's an Orientalist perspective even for people that are residing in this region and look towards the West for guidance. Distillation started in the Arab world.
Yeah,
exactly. So I want to focus on that, and to show that basically there's a lot of culture, history, heritage that goes into the process, and it's a give and take process. We did give the West distillation, but we also got some advancement from the West with the different distillation techniques and all that stuff. So definitely,
so
I'd like
setting
to,
things in order a little bit, like humbly speaking, yeah. Just to re-educate, to make sure that all the right knowledge is
at least that's the motivation. Doesn't mean that I'm going to be able to achieve it, but that's the main drive.
Right. Okay. This is like a kind of question that's a little bit light. Have you ever been tipsy?
Obviously.
Yeah? Oh, okay. I didn't expect that, actually. Okay. That's it? Nothing to say about that?
No, it's fine. I would like to I like to perceive having a buzz as a positive side effect of having a drink, not the outcome or the desired outcome.
Okay.
It's a side effect.
So it's a controlled tipsy you were in, sort of thing?
I don't really think of it all that much, but the idea is that when you're having a drink, it's about the social element. So think of when people have a drink. It's either a social element or they're having personal issues. Now, the idea, in my opinion, when they're having personal issues, they tend to they're consuming it for the wrong reasons.
Right. Right.
Whereas when it's drank or had in a social setting, it's very positive. It
to have a good time.
It brings people together, and that's why it's very significant historically and socially. Even the blood of Christ is the Eucharist, which is symbolized in wine.
In wine, yeah.
And wine and spirits have been mentioned in numerous amounts of political, historical, and cultural texts. Yeah. So definitely the social element is extremely important. And if you think about it, it's like, so again, with the drug analogy, if you're like having a drink in order to distance yourself or drown out some mental issues that you might be having, it's kind of like taking a Panadol for a broken leg,
right.
Or even
it's not going to heal you. It's
not going to heal you. It might even have a worse effect. So, and if we want to keep this drug analogy, I would probably compare it to a social lubricant. It brings people together.
Yeah.
Think of what wine usually symbolizes for people. It's friendship, it's companionship, it's love. It's
cheers. How we always go cheers together.
Exactly.
Right.
Happy moments.
Yeah.
So yes.
Okay. As a father of 2 young children, how does a person introduce children to alcohol and get them to drink responsibly? Because they get to a certain age, where it's like cool to drink too much and to get drunk, and there's a little bit of peer pressure going with that. So how would you teach your children to drink responsibly and not to go overboard with their friends or anything?
Well, the idea of alcohol shouldn't be that taboo, in my opinion. I guess from my upbringing, it wasn't really something that we thought of. It's just part of
Part
life,
of your daily life,
exactly.
Yeah.
And flavor and taste appreciation is an experience in itself.
Right.
So I don't mind my children, for example, blacks. I do encourage them to smell as much wines and spirits.
It's also heightening the senses.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Doesn't necessarily. I don't encourage them to drink it,
right.
Especially at
they're very young, your children.
Exactly.
yeah.
But yes, exploring them. So exploring the different flavor profiles, the aromas, all that. So once you focus on the sensorial experience, the inebriation part becomes quite dull. You know?
You're right. I never thought about it that way, but you're completely right about that.
It's more of because when you're tasting a wine or a spirit, you're involving all of your senses. So you're looking at the wine or the spirit, you're smelling it, you're tasting it, you're thinking about it.
Yeah.
So you kind of drown out everything
you're
from
focusing.
The outside world, and you're focusing on the wine or spirit that you're tasting. And you're reflecting if you're tasting with people, you're reflecting about those wines and spirits with people that you're tasting with, which can form a stronger bond with those people.
Like in your workshops.
Yeah.
Yeah. Question number 9. There's a French spirit called eau de vie, and you hear that in different languages, aquavida, and I think from the etymology of alcohol, there's something related to it. I'm not sure. In Arabic, I mean.
Yes.
Or am I mistaken? Yeah. But sorry, I'm going to interrupt you. Just going to finish. What is alcohol for you? Because this is eau de vie, it's the water of life. Is that the water of life? Is alcohol the water of life?
Well, just to set the record straight, water of life has been used in history for many to convey many meanings, to convey many things. It doesn't necessarily have to be distilled spirits.
Right.
However, aquavita in particular is kind of the genesis in Europe for that term, because how it evolved is related to basically its genesis was in the Arab world, and it was pre-Abbasid Caliphate.
Yeah.
So how we know that is twofold. From one part, we look at the scientific references. So Jabir bin Hayyan, which was an 8th century polymath, was the first to document distillation.
A polymath.
Scientifically.
Yeah.
And he used to say that it was khamr ma'alla, elevated wine. Whereas there are also literary and poetic references for
throughout history in all cultures.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the oldest reference to know that there was distilled spirits in the Arab world, there was a poet that was describing, he was consuming something and described it as burning rain or fire rain. So it's something which is transparent.
A little bit, the throat, right?
And it burns.
Yeah.
Wine usually doesn't burn,
right?
And it's not transparent.
Oh, so that's how they knew it was a spirit.
Most likely, it's a distilled spirit.
Okay.
And it had multiple names. So one of them was fire rain. Elevated wine was another one. Ara in particular. So distillation is when you're separating the alcohol from the fermented beverage.
Right.
By process of evaporation. So the liquid will have to evaporate and then it has to condense back down. So the still condensing means it's sweating. So ara comes from there.
Right.
And even in modern Persian or modern day Iran, ara means distillate. So even
in the Persian language,
and orange blossom is called tara. And Ara of the time,
Sorry, in Persia, arak means also rose water. It could be
Distillate.
Distillate. Oh, okay.
any distillate,
Oh, okay.
whether
okay,
it's
I understand
alcohol
now.
or non-alcoholic.
Right. Okay.
And in the Arab world, back in the day, during the Abbasid period and even before that, didn't refer to something which was anise flavored. The oldest reference for it being anise flavored was another polymath called Al-Razi. He visited the Levant, Bilad al-Sham, and he saw that they were distilling it with aniseed. So it was around the 9th century, around 1200 years.
Is that how old arak is?
It's probably older than that. This is the oldest reference.
Okay.
Okay.
That's interesting. I never thought about the age of arak.
Now back to Aquavita. So the oldest literary reference was for an Arabic poet that wasn't necessarily famous for his, for talking about alcohol. He was more known for talking about nobility, chivalry, and stuff like that.
Which one do you remember?
His name is Al-Mutanabbi.
Oh, of course.
So Al-Mutanabbi, in one of his poems, he talks about the water of life. He actually ends his poem about talking about water of life, and it goes something like this. He says, لا تسقني ماء الحياة بالذلة فاسقني بالعزة كأس الحنظل ماء الحياة بالذلة كالجهنم والجهنم بالعزة أطيب منزلا. What he's saying is basically...
And you memorized it too.
If you want to serve me a drink, it's best, you'd better do it with honor. Because if you're humiliating me, or I would rather drink a very bitter cup in honor than drink like water of life with humiliation.
Yeah.
And if you were honoring me, I would, because the water of life in humiliation feels like hell, and I would make hell as a dwelling if you were honoring me. Something like that.
Yeah, that's very prosaic.
It's a bit lost in translation.
It's very symbolic. Yeah.
But basically, it's in a drinking context. So distillation went into Europe through two main routes: through Salerno in Italy and through the Andalus in Spain.
In Spain, yeah.
And in Italy, they had the medical school of Salerno, and Salerno is quite close to Sicily.
The medical school.
Yes.
Okay.
So why is that significant? Because Sicily was under the Abbasid rule. So that's why it got into Italy before the rest of Europe, and basically modern day Spain was part of the Abbasid Caliphate. It was Arabic.
Okay. Yeah.
So one of the terms that they adopted was aquavita, ma al hayat, or water of life.
Hayat, yeah.
And back in the day, it was either fermented or distilled. We didn't have different types of spirits. Okay, so aquavita, depending on what the certain geography used to produce, they used to make it out of. In France, in particular, it's grapes.
Grapes, yeah.
And fruits.
Depending on the earth, yeah.
They used to ferment fruits and distill them, and grapes in particular. That's how eau de vie, let's say, came to be. For example, in modern day Scandinavia, they still use aquavit, or it's aquavit instead of aquavita.
I don't really know much about alcohol in Scandinavian culture, so.
In the British Isles, in Scotland and Ireland, both were under the English rule.
Yeah.
So the oldest reference for distillation was basically King Henry VII in the 15th century. Was taxing someone for purchasing 8 bales of malt to produce aquavita.
Okay.
Aquavita in the Gaelic and Celtic languages, it's pronounced Ishkebaha in the Celtic and Uskeba in Gaelic.
Which sounds a bit like whiskey.
Exactly.
Right.
Which means water of life.
I'm not really smart, but I just heard you say it.
In the early 1700s, an English writer called Martin Martin visited the Scottish Isles, and he saw them producing Uskeba.
Yeah.
And he anglicized Uskeba into whiskey. The Scotch didn't use that term because technically the English didn't purchase any whiskey from them. the main whiskey producing country was Ireland.
Oh, Ireland came
not
before
Scotland.
Scotland. Ah.
Not Scotland. And they used to export Irish whiskey all over the globe. The main reason why Irish whiskey spiraled down and Scotch whiskey
Spiraled up
is that the English, or actually the Irish, gained their independence from the English.
Oh.
And who's still part of the
Right. The
Great
British
Britain,
Empire, yeah.
the British Empire, are the Scotch. So they started purchasing Scotch whiskey and exporting it to its colonies, and that's how.
The game of politics is incredible.
And that's why Scotch whiskey is the most exported whiskey all over the world, not any other style.
Wow, that's so
It's rooted
interesting.
in basically colonial Britain.
Wow, how the world changes at just that little political decision and everything. It's fascinating. And we've evolved so much.
Yes.
Question number 10. What makes the ordinary extraordinary?
I guess focus. I guess everyone has extraordinary ideas. It's just trying to execute those ideas and following up with those ideas, trying to make them into a reality. That's what makes something extraordinary, because you're making it materialize.
You're making
it's
the
no
effort.
longer
Yeah.
it's no longer abstract. The idea of a Lebanese whiskey at some point was almost unimaginable to a lot of people. So how to take that idea and materialize it, I think, is important.
Yeah. Well, thanks to you, you're making that come to life a little bit.
Thank you.
And I have a bottle of that I'd like for you to show everybody how to taste whiskey. Is that okay? Can we get that? So
you have a small syringe as well.
Yeah, I didn't find the pipette. I found this in the pharmacy, but it works.
Yeah,
it works fine.
Works.
Okay.
So the idea is that spirits are high in alcohol, and our basically the threshold for tasting something that has alcohol is about 20% without feeling the burn. That's why most wines and beers don't burn.
Okay.
Whereas spirits, in particular whiskey, we're starting off with a minimum of 40% alcohol by volume, and it can go up to 60s, let's say, if we're tasting a cask strength whiskey. So we'd have to taste it neat, then watered down. Neat in order to gauge the spirit as it was bottled, let's say. And then we water it down for many reasons. The first is to eliminate this burning sensation from the alcohol.
Oh, the burning sensation will go away if you put up just a drop of water in it?
Well, or reduce it quite dramatically.
Oh, okay.
But secondly, whiskey is kind of a bit oily because it's matured in wood. And usually taste is mostly aromas. So there are only 5 flavors on the palate, which are sweet, sour, bitter, salt, and savory.
On the tongue.
On the tongue.
Yeah.
And the rest are perceived through what is called the olfactory bulbs. They are receptors between the mouth and the nose. So they're technically smells.
Yeah.
And everything which is aromatic or odoriferous, on a chemical level, they're basically esters or aldehydes, ketones, and terpenes. Most of those are dissolved in the alcohol.
Wow.
So when you add a drop of water, they're hydrophobic, they float to the surface.
Yeah.
So you can smell them and taste them better.
It's true. Yeah, I went through it, but
always when you have to look at the whiskey, the darker the whiskey, the woodier it is.
So this is a woody whiskey.
100%.
Yeah.
Then the smell is kind of the promise, what we're going to expect.
It smells so nice. It does.
Then you take a small sip. You don't take in a lot of whiskey because it's still fairly high alcohol.
We don't get tipsy.
Before we get there, in order not to burn yourself, because here this whiskey in particular it's about 49% alcohol, so it's almost half of the liquid is alcohol.
Right. Okay. So I have to taste it now. أنا شهدت مجروحة, so I know it's really good.
So we take a small sip, we inhale from the mouth and exhale from the nose, it will amplify the aromas. You know, you're going to be perceiving them through the olfactory bulbs more. Now,
right.
let's say then you water it down. This is one way, I guess, to use a syringe.
Yeah. It's a nice way to use it. Thank you.
So we just swirl it a bit and smell it. Doesn't the aroma of the whiskey show more?
Yeah, it's coming out. Did you taste it?
We taste.
Can you do cheers? Cheers. What a difference. It's incredible. Just that drop of water.
You're actually tasting the whiskey now.
Yeah.
The
You'd think it gets watered down, but it's not. On the contrary.
You're just watering down the alcohol.
Yeah.
So it burns less and you can taste the whiskey more.
And it's very good. Thank you so much, Roy. Thank
My
you
pleasure.
for this super enriching episode. And I highly recommend... Oh, people can see you where exactly?
On social media, we're basically on Instagram, Riachi Official.
Yeah.
They can also follow my personal account, which is also where I post. I kind of co-post most of the videos on both platforms anyway.
I highly recommend people to go in because they can learn so much from it. Just it's so interesting and so enriching. And I really thank you so much for joining me today. I really enjoyed it a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you. One more.
Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you, my friend.